we're going to go over how to make some sketchbooks with things that you have around the house. So one thing that you definitely need is paper. Just regular printer paper works, or if you have heavier weight paper, that's great if you're doing maybe things with ink or watercolor, but you really just regular paper is totally good. If you don't have that, if you have perhaps say paper grocery bags, like this guy, you could definitely deconstruct this and turn this into multiple sheets of paper as well. So if I'm going with this paper, I have two choices. I can just fold it directly in half and have this kind of size sketchbook. So this is a nice big, pretty big size sketchbook, and I would just fold it over, line my edges up, and crease this. Or I could go with something smaller, like this little one, right? So full size, half size. So to get the half size, all I'm doing is, I have to do this one at a time, but I would take my papers, fold those in half, crease the edges really well. So I usually use like the side of my thumbnail, and then I need to fold it or open it up onto the fold side pointing up, mountain side. Hold it with one hand and then carefully start to tear a little bit at a time. I kind of use my thumb to guide this along. And then ta-da, I have my pages, right? I would recommend about 8 to 10 pages for your sketchbook. And then these I would fold in half as well and continue as normal. Before I get to binding my sketchbook, I do need to think about what is the cover going to look like. So you have a lot of choices, even just from just around the house. So let me show you a few of my favorite kind of go-tos. So one would be just like a cardstock, right? So this is just a little bit thicker, and this one happens to be a color, right? So it's a little bit heavier weight. Another option would be if you have, say, like a kind of cardboard-like material. So this is sort of like a cardboard, and I've happened to paint the front. This is made out of pieces of a paper bag. I took apart all these. I took off the bottom, and I started to cut it to shape. And the main thing for this is that it is not one layer. It is at least 2 layers glued together. And then also cardboard. Cardboard works great. So you can see my corrugated cardboard. Or in a pinch, you really could just use your paper, but make sure that you take at least 3 sheets and glue them together as your cover page. So that will give you a little bit of a stronger cover. So similar to the paper bag, but just using the paper that you happen to have. So once you've decided what your cover is going to be, maybe I'll take cardboard for this one, make a little one, cut it to shape. Right, this one's a little bit of an off size, but I'm going to go with it just for a demonstration. So now what I need to do is poke holes to sew. So I'm going to go with a small piece. And in order to do this, I want to poke holes not directly on my work surface. So maybe I have another piece of cardboard, or maybe I have like a wooden board like this, right? And to poke holes, I need to find something that will do that. So perhaps, oh, and just to say, this is for the binding method. So this is if you have, say, a needle and thread. So a regular old needle and thread here will work. Or if you happen to have some embroidery floss, a little bit thicker, or maybe even like a stretchy kind of elastic for beading, that would work as well. So any of those would work if I was doing a sewn binding. So if I need to sew a binding, I need something to poke my hole with. In a pinch, you could definitely use your needle for your sewing needle, but it's a little bit harder to really poke it through because it doesn't have a blunt end, so it's, not very comfortable. I find that a, safety pin works quite well. So I'm just going to poke right through the middle. I like to hold it at a slight angle, poke right through, right? Really want to make sure that I've gotten it through. So right through the middle, and then 2 on either side, leaving about a 1/4 inch. For this one, because my paper's going over the edge, I want to also keep that in mind and go a little further inward. So now I'm going to grab my needle and thread, and it really should be at least twice as long as your sketchbook, right? This one's, it'll be a little tight, but we'll make it work. And it's doubled up, right? So I have 2 threads that are ending at a tail. And you can start from the inside or outside. So I'm just going to start from here because that's where I happen to be. I'm going to find my hole and sew through. And I don't want to let my tail go all the way through, so I'm going to just hold it with my finger Then I'm going to go over to one of the top or bottom ends, sew through there, kind of finding my hole. And then here is the sort of sometimes surprising part, is that I'm going right back through the middle. So I'm just making a loop around this first section. And then I'm going to go to this other side, to the other end that I haven't gone through yet. Bring that through. And then I'll finish it by tying these two ends together. All right, so you can tie those together, cut off, leave about a 1/4 inch, and then you can see you'll have your sewn book. So I have a kind of loose thread here that I just need to tighten up a little bit. And that will be my sketchbook, right? And you can decorate the cover if you want, you can leave it plain, whatever works for you. So if I didn't want to do that with a needle and thread, I have a few choices, right? If you don't have a needle and thread, or for whatever reason, start back over, pretend we don't have that. If I did have embroidery floss, you would need a thicker needle, because you can see that just the thickness of this thread is a lot, it's just a lot more. You could try wrapping some tape around it. You'd have to make these holes a lot larger, so you might even get maybe some scissors and just kind of drill a hole into there, or even a little bit of a screwdriver or something, and then you could probably sew this through, right? Same thing if you wanted to work with like an elastic like this. If you wanted to sew it, and sewing does give the strongest attachment, you do need to make the hole large enough to accept this if you don't have a needle. But if for some reason you don't have any way to sew it, and you don't, and you just don't want to do that, you could also just wrap something around. So an elastic is really nice because it gives a little bit of tension. All right, so I'd wrap this around, hold it down. If I wanted to do this, I would really make sure to have a pretty sturdy cover like cardboard, because as you can see, the elastic, the tension will bend the paper. So I would tie this into a double knot, and voila, I have a sketchbook, right? And you can add, and this is great because you can really easily add more paper. So say, oh no, I don't have enough paper in here. Let me just quickly add some more. So that's the really convenient part about just tying it on here. And like I said, the elastic is great because it does give a little bit more of a tight hold. So you could do the same thing with this strap elastic, or if you really have if you have nothing else, just a ribbon might work. Right, so let me take off this elastic. So if I want to use a ribbon, it's the same idea as the elastic, right? The difference is that this one doesn't have any give, so it will not be as easy to maybe add papers, or it maybe won't be as flexible. But that's not a problem if you're just kind of going for a quick and easy sketchbook, right? And then you can leave the tails, you can do whatever you want with it, and then again, pretty quick sketchbook right there. All right, so those are your options. And if you had a really small sketchbook, right, say you were going with something small, which for these purposes I really would avoid, but if for some reason, if this is all you've got, that's, you know, let's make do with what we have. If you grab just a fairly good size rubber band, you could use this to bind this together, just like how I was doing with the elastic itself. So really, there are many ways to make a sketchbook with what you've got.